I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that me and Wid's been sitting here waiting for that coach to pull in.
Pernell Roberts walked away from Bonanza at the height of its success. NBC offered him $10,500 per episode, a fortune in 1965. He turned it down without blinking. While his co-stars became millionaires, Roberts vanished from Hollywood. Behind the scenes, he'd been fighting producers for years. He called the show childish and hated that his character never grew. But money wasn't why he really left. His true reason remained hidden until recently. The shocking truth: it involved civil rights, blacklisting, and a secret Hollywood wanted buried forever. Pernell Roberts was born on May 18, 1928, in Waycross, Georgia. He came into the world just as the Great Depression hit, and his childhood was marked by deep poverty. By the time he turned 5, over 60% of the farms in his area had been foreclosed. His father, once dreaming of becoming a doctor, ended up selling Dr. Pepper door to door. He earned just $7.85 a week, about $143 in today's money. Their wooden house had no plumbing, and young Pernell had to walk over a mile every day to fetch water. From 1932 to 1934, his family had to rely on food assistance as the town's unemployment reached nearly 42%. One moment changed him forever. On July 11, 1939, when he was just 11, he saw 78 Klan members march through his town. That terrifying sight planted the seeds of his passion for civil rights. His mother worked 3 jobs, sometimes until 2 in the morning. Pernell would wait outside the factory to walk her home safely. That kind of hardship shaped his grit and made him the intense, unyielding man he would later become. But music gave him hope. In 1941, at just 13, he discovered a broken tuba in a junkyard. In less than 3 months, he taught himself to play it, along with the French horn, sousaphone, and 5 types of drums. By the age of 15, he could play 11 instruments. He even performed for soldiers at the local USO club, replicating complex music after just one listen. In 1944, an accident crushed his hand. Doctors said he had only a 7% chance of recovering full use. He refused to accept that. Instead, he practiced for 14 hours every day, regaining his strength. By March 1945, he was playing Chopin's toughest piano piece with full command. He wasn't just a performer, he was a composer too. His yearbook listed 14 original pieces. One of them, Southern Lament, was even performed by the Atlanta Symphony in 1946. Juilliard offered him a full scholarship. He turned it down, calling the training too restrictive. Even though he was too young to enlist, Pernell poured himself into supporting the war. Just 2 days after Pearl Harbor, he organized a musical revue that raised $837, about $15,400 today, for war bonds. Between 1942 and 1945, he performed 247 USO shows. Sometimes, he cycled nearly 30 miles to reach military bases. In August 1944, at just 16, he was secretly hired by the War Department to perform for wounded soldiers and even German POWs at Camp Gordon. Military psychologists later noted that his shows helped improve recovery rates for severely injured soldiers. On March 11, 1945, during a rocket alert drill, he refused to leave the stage. He kept playing his tuba for the full 37 minutes. That act of bravery earned him a commendation signed by General Eisenhower. And during Christmas Eve that same year, while burning up with scarlet fever, he performed for 178 soldiers, 16 of whom died days later in the Battle of the Bulge. He found theater in church. At just 8 years old, his first role shocked the congregation. He was supposed to play a shepherd, but he added a 4-minute monologue questioning God's silence during Herod's massacre. People were stunned. By 12, he'd done over 20 church plays. In 1943, he organized the town's first integrated performance, bringing in 7 black teenagers to act alongside him. The backlash was intense. Dozens left the church. His father's job was even threatened. But Roberts didn't stop. In 1944, he played Judas as a misunderstood rebel instead of a villain, prompting protests from church elders. His final church performance, The Prodigal Son, rewrote the Bible story to critique inequality. A theater director saw the performance and gave him his first professional opportunity 6 weeks later. In 1946, he joined Georgia Tech with high test scores, but quickly ran into trouble. He organized a debate about nuclear weapons and boycotted ROTC classes, which he said promoted blind obedience. He published a bold critique in the school newspaper accusing the engineering program of ignoring ethics. By April, he was under FBI surveillance for leading student groups that studied Marx and Einstein. One dean called him gifted but dangerous. After just 141 days, Roberts left. He later said he wasn't interested in building bridges, he wanted to understand who controlled them. That summer, he joined the United States Marine Corps. Because of his musical talent, he didn't see combat. Instead, he joined the Marine Corps Band and performed at over 200 official events during the Truman presidency. In one performance, he stood just 7 feet away from Winston Churchill. He almost got court-martialed for playing jazz during a military review but was saved by a commander who admired his style. After leaving the Marines in 1948, he returned to Georgia Tech. He had top marks in calculus but left again after a heated argument over the social role of engineers. Then in 1950, he enrolled at the University of Maryland as a philosophy student. There he passed all his humanities classes with top grades and deliberately failed his science ones. Pernell Roberts' Hollywood transition 1958 to 1959, Sophia Loren film debut. Pernell Roberts' early Hollywood career reached a significant milestone when he secured a role in the 1958 production Desire Under the Elms, working alongside international sensation Sophia Loren and rising star Anthony Perkins. This adaptation of Eugene O'Neill's 1924 play represented a prestigious opportunity for Roberts, who portrayed Peter Cabot in the emotionally charged drama. The film, directed by Delbert Mann with a screenplay adaptation by O'Neill himself and Irwin Shaw, was released by Paramount Pictures through Don Hartman Productions. Despite its notable cast and literary pedigree, the film received mixed reviews, with critics particularly criticizing Burl Ives's portrayal of Ephraim Cabot. Bosley Crowther of the New York Times famously panned Ives's performance, stating he looked more like foxy grandpa with a pious black hat on his head than like a gaunt and tireless old twala. The film's $1 million box office performance, domestic rentals, was modest, though it did receive an Academy Award nomination for Best Black and White Cinematography, Daniel L. Pfapp, and earned recognition at the 1959 Laurel Awards. For Roberts, this 111-minute dramatic feature represented his entrance into serious Hollywood filmmaking, setting the stage for his eclectic career trajectory that would soon lead him to even greater recognition. Western film typecasting begins. In 1958, Roberts landed a character role in The Sheep Man, acting opposite Hollywood stalwart Glenn Ford in what would become an ironic foreshadowing of his career's direction. This Western production marked the beginning of Roberts's complicated relationship with the genre that would simultaneously elevate his profile and eventually frustrate his artistic ambitions. As a classically trained actor who had performed Shakespeare on Broadway and won the prestigious Best Actor Drama Desk Award for his off-Broadway performance as Macbeth in 1955, Roberts brought a distinctive gravitas to his Western characters. His formal theatrical background set him apart from many of his contemporaries, infusing his performances with nuanced characterization rarely seen in the genre. Throughout 1958, Roberts shuttled between film sets and theatrical productions, having recently completed Broadway runs in The Taming of the Shrew and The Duchess of Malfi, 1957, before transitioning to Hollywood projects. The irony of his Western typecasting would later become apparent when critics noted, if Roberts felt typecast by Westerns, they also provided his finest role. His experience on the Sheep Man set introduced him to the production realities of Hollywood Westerns, long shoots in remote locations, physically demanding scenes, and simplified dialogue compared to his Shakespearean background, establishing professional patterns and industry connections that would ultimately lead to his breakthrough television opportunity the following year. Randolph Scott collaboration in Ride Lonesome, Roberts delivered what many critics consider his finest cinematic performance in the 1959 Western Ride Lonesome, where he portrayed the morally complex outlaw Sam Boone opposite genre icon Randolph Scott. Directed by Bud Boetticher and shot in striking cinemascope at Lone Pine starting August 14, 1958, this 73-minute film has been hailed by aficionados as arguably the greatest of the B-movies, as part of Boetticher's acclaimed Ran-owned cycle of westerns. The production also marked the film debut of James Coburn, creating a legendary ensemble cast. Roberts's portrayal of Boone was particularly celebrated for its complexity, with one reviewer noting that Roberts evokes every bit of sardonic humor, masculine charm, and fidelity to his own peculiar code that the script allows him. Interestingly, in Burt Kennedy's original screenplay, Roberts's character was meant to die, but Boetticher found his performance so charming that he contacted studio executive Sam Briskin, requesting permission to let the character live. The director later claimed he promised to shoot 2 endings, but deliberately only filmed the version where Roberts survives. The film's production coincided with Roberts's growing theatrical reputation, creating a pivotal moment where his stage honed acting abilities translated perfectly to the Western genre, showcasing his capacity to embody complex characters even within conventional frameworks. In 1959, Pernell Roberts signed on to play Adam Cartwright in Bonanza. It was a big deal. NBC had high hopes, and Roberts was no rookie. He had a strong background in theater, with roles in OLL and Antigone. But by 1962, just 3 years into the show, Roberts was already frustrated. He said openly, "I had to sign for a 6th year to get a raise. But now I would prefer to be out entirely." He had signed a 5-year deal, but NBC extended it to 6, desperate to keep their top-rated show going strong. When he asked to leave, they refused. One executive admitted, "We were trying to deliver a neat package to a new sponsor, and I felt some responsibility." Roberts played Adam as a thoughtful, college-educated architect. He was the calm, intellectual brother, a contrast to the younger, more hot-headed Cartwrights. But what started as a fresh, complex role quickly became stale. The writers wouldn't let the character grow. Even though Adam was a grown man, he still acted like he needed his father's permission for everything. Roberts later said, "I thought it would be a sophisticated show, but what we got felt empty." By 1962, he was already warning people things weren't working. "What we discussed never happened," he said. In 1965, he hit his limit. "I fought with the powers about the scripts, character development, and other things," he explained. "It got so I was upset the minute I arrived for work. That's no way to live." After he left, he told a newspaper, "The Bonanza situation was not the most fulfilling of my life. I needed to get into a different environment for a while, so I concentrated on regional theater." Even though Bonanza made him a star, the spotlight never sat well with him. The sudden fame was jarring. He once said, "My being part of Bonanza was like Isaac Stern sitting in with Lawrence Welk." Roberts didn't want fame for fame's sake. He wanted purpose. He felt boxed in by the show's formula and its lack of depth. By 1963, he was asking, "Isn't it a bit silly for 3 adult males to have to ask fathers' permission for everything they do?" He longed for roles that let him dig deep, but instead he kept playing the same lines week after week. The psychological toll was growing. "It wore me down," he admitted. On set, Roberts didn't hide his anger. He fought with producers and writers constantly. "From the beginning, he challenged nearly everything. For the first 3 years of the show, I fought all the way," he said. "Then I just became resigned to serving out my time." He hated the rushed pace. Scripts came in at the last minute. There was no time for rehearsal or thinking deeply about the scenes. "It was a lousy way to work," he said, and he made sure everyone knew it. Producer David Dortort called him rebellious, outspoken, and aloof, but even he admitted Roberts had talent. He could make any scene better. Still, by 1964, Roberts had stopped pretending things would improve. "I haven't grown at all since the series began," he said. I have an impotent role. Wherever I turn, there's the father image. While all of this was happening, Roberts didn't stay quiet about what mattered outside the set either. He used his fame to speak up for civil rights. In 1965, he marched alongside Martin Luther King Jr. from Selma to Montgomery. He joined figures like Harry Belafonte and Joan Baez. And on the set of Bonanza, he fought hard against discriminatory casting. His family later said he pushed NBC to hire real Native American and Asian actors for roles, not just white actors in makeup. He even suggested a storyline where Adam Cartwright would marry a Native American woman played by a black actress. NBC shut that idea down immediately. But Roberts kept pushing. He didn't care how the network felt about it. He believed in doing the right thing, even if it cost him. In the middle of his TV career, he tried something different. In 1963, Roberts recorded a folk music album called Come All Ye Fair and Tender Ladies, released through RCA Victor. It showed a softer, more artistic side of him. He sang traditional folk songs like In the Pines and They Call the Wind Maria. Music gave him a kind of escape that acting on Bonanza couldn't. It let him be creative without the network getting in the way. The album wasn't a blockbuster, but it mattered to him. It was honest, real, just like the kind of work he wanted to do. Roberts also kept looking for ways to return to the stage. Theater was his first love, but his NBC contract made it almost impossible. He wasn't allowed to take outside work during production months. That restriction drove him crazy. He said one of the biggest problems with Bonanza was not being allowed to perform elsewhere. He felt trapped. In 1963, he tried to break free by joining Night of the Iguana on stage, but the network wasn't happy. By late 1964, Pernell Roberts was mentally exhausted. Playing Adam Cartwright on Bonanza had pushed him to a breaking point. He was no longer just frustrated, he was crushed. Roberts, a serious actor with Shakespearean training and a Drama Desk Award under his belt, felt creatively trapped. He said the role was so empty that he stopped reading scripts. He'd show up, ask someone for the lines, say them, and go home. That was all it meant to him now. One day during filming, he was seen drawing thick black lines through his dialogue with a stubby pencil. He refused to memorize a speech, insisting his character would read it from notes instead. Roberts had reached a point of quiet rebellion. He later said he spent his final 2 years on the show in a state of resignation. The character never changed, never grew, and Roberts felt like a grown man stuck playing a child. And then came the moment that stunned Hollywood. NBC offered him one of the most generous TV contracts of the decade, $10,500 per episode, full rerun residuals, and a total payday of $693,000 for the 1965-66 season. But Roberts didn't even blink. He walked away. His co-stars stayed, got raises, and by 1970 they were millionaires. But when asked about the money he gave up, Roberts shrugged. He said he didn't need that much to live. For him, art and integrity mattered more than money. Just weeks after filming his last Bonanza episode, Roberts stood shoulder to shoulder with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. at the Selma to Montgomery March. He wasn't looking for attention. He had always been active in civil rights. He protested on picket lines, stood before lawmakers, and pressured NBC to stop casting white actors in ethnic roles. He even challenged the network over its all-white crews. For Roberts, standing up for justice mattered more than protecting a TV career. But behind the scenes, things had already soured. By 1964, his battles with the producers were open and bitter. He called the show childish, complained about its lack of diversity, and questioned why 3 grown men needed their father's permission for everything. His co-star Lorne Greene called him unprofessional. Producer David Dortort called him rebellious. And Roberts fought back, crossing out dialogue and trying to insert honesty into a show he saw as silly and shallow. Years later, Dortort admitted he was wrong. He said he didn't appreciate just how good Roberts was. But it was too late. Roberts had already left. Convinced that television had become a machine for conformity and greed, he felt it was killing creativity, and he didn't want to be a part of it. In 1972, Roberts returned to Broadway, starring alongside Ingrid Bergman in Captain Brassbound's Conversion. It was a proud moment. A reviewer praised his performance and hoped it would finally lift the shadow of Bonanza from his career. It didn't, but it proved he had never lost his stage power. The next year, he played Rhett Butler in a stage version of Gone with the Wind. The show flopped. Critics blamed the production, not Roberts, but the damage was done. It was another miss in a string of post-Bonanza setbacks. His performance was good, but the projects around him kept falling short. Hollywood used that to say he had made a terrible mistake by leaving. Still, not everyone agreed. In 1973, Roberts was nominated for a Joseph Jefferson Award for his performance in Welcome Home in Chicago. It was a rare moment of recognition during a rough time. He was still doing guest spots on TV, The Odd Couple, Gunsmoke, Mannix, but the industry had mostly turned its back on him. He had become a quiet warning to others, don't rock the boat like Pernell did. For years, he couldn't get another series. He later admitted he never even had the chance to say no. After criticizing TV so openly, he was quietly blacklisted. Producers used him as a cautionary tale. They'd say, "Do what we say or end up like Roberts." He could have been bitter, but instead, he healed. He went back to regional theater, far from Hollywood, and played everything from Captain Von Trapp in The Sound of Music to Randall McMurphy in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. These were lean years financially, but Roberts called them necessary. He said he had to regroup emotionally, and he never once said he regretted leaving Bonanza. Pernell Roberts walked away from one of the biggest shows in television history. In 1965, he left Bonanza and gave up a huge paycheck, $60,000 per episode, which would be over $500,000 today. For the next 14 years, he stayed mostly out of the spotlight. He worked in theater, but few expected him to make a TV comeback. That changed by chance. In October 1978, at a charity event, he joked about being television's most famous quitter. One of the producers, Frank Glicksman, was there. That joke turned into an audition, and that audition shocked the executives. A year later, on September 23, 1979, exactly 20 years after his first Bonanza appearance, Trapper John, MD premiered. It drew over 28 million viewers on the first night. Pernell had returned in a big way. He made sure this comeback would be different. He got script approval and more freedom over his schedule, something he never had on Bonanza. He wasn't just playing a doctor, he was shaping the show from the inside. In 1981, he was nominated for an Emmy, but he almost turned it down. He didn't like the idea of artists competing. He only agreed to attend after learning that the episode being submitted, where his character operates on a political prisoner, was being used in medical schools. That episode reached nearly half the TV audience that night. Instead of doing a fancy Emmy campaign, Roberts donated his $25,000 promotional budget to the Southern Poverty Law Center. He included a note, "Use this to fight real battles instead of fictional ones." Trapper John, MD ran for 7 full seasons. It outlasted his time on Bonanza. The show aired 151 episodes and ended on his terms in 1986. Though Bonanza had more viewers in its time, Trapper John held strong even against tough competition. It was one of the rare shows that had fans in all age groups and backgrounds. It made $127.8 million in advertising. Roberts earned around $4.5 million from his cut of the profits alone. But it wasn't just about money. He demanded the character be more than a stereotype. He asked the writers to explore Trapper's past, especially his Vietnam War experience, and to show how he grew from a reckless surgeon into a thoughtful leader. That kind of depth was rare for medical dramas at the time. Behind the scenes, Roberts changed the rules. He picked his own team, something unheard of back then. One of his boldest choices was hiring David Friedkin, a writer who had been blacklisted during the Red Scare. That almost cost the show a major sponsor. But Roberts didn't back down. He also demanded more diversity. Nearly 40% of the show's directors were women or minorities. That was 5 times the industry average. In 1981, he threatened to quit unless they cast a black recurring character. That's how M. Sinclair got her role as Nurse Shoop. He treated the crew with respect. Every week, he held meetings where anyone could suggest improvements. That saved time, kept morale high, and lowered turnover. He even created a profit-sharing system. 2% of syndication profits went to the crew. The Television Academy invited him to speak about it in 1984. Even with his TV comeback, he never stopped being an activist. He gave away 25% of his salary to a foundation that defended free speech in the arts. He turned his private trailer into a headquarters for equal rights amendment campaigns. Studio bosses didn't like it. He didn't care. When 7 TV stations refused to air his episodes because of his political views, he used his script control to create the boldest episode yet, Trapper treating wounded Nicaraguan civilians. He also launched a training program for underprivileged youth. Every year, 14 of them came to the set for paid production experience. Several went on to become members of the Directors Guild. In his personal life, he was quiet but complex. He was married 4 times. His first wife, a theater professor 15 years older, had his only child, Jonathan. His later marriages included one on a Bonanza lunch break, another that lasted over 20 years, and finally a deep intellectual connection with Professor Eleanor Criswell. They married in 1997 and stayed together until his death. The hardest moment in his life came in 1989. His son Jonathan died in a motorcycle accident at age 38. Roberts never spoke publicly about it for years. He eventually said the grief was too deep to share. It changed him. After that, he chose roles more carefully and distanced himself even further from the Hollywood spotlight. He lived in Malibu, far from the noise of fame. His home wasn't filled with awards, but with books, Native American art, and ocean views. It became his quiet place. When he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer at 79, he stayed there. No media statements, no sympathy seeking, just dignity, privacy, and the love of Eleanor, who took care of him until the end. He died on January 24, 2010, at age 81. He was the last living member of the original Bonanza cast, outliving the others even though he left the show first. In a way, he outlasted everything: Hollywood trends, fame, and even the roles people expected him to play.